Are you trying to tell me that if Rex Ryan had put his foot down in the locker room and said, guys, whether you like it or not, we're going with Tim Tebow, are you saying the team would have quit on Tim Tebow in that game? They wouldn't have even tried for him?
I'm not saying that. I don't think that would have been a very popular decision, Skip, because, first of all, Mark Sanchez actually played well a couple of games ago against the Patriots, and they should have beaten the Patriots if not for some questionable coaching decisions at the end of that game. So I think he sustained himself and bought a little collateral with that performance. Obviously, he played lousy against Miami and again against Seattle, but I do not. I wrote this story on Monday. I don't think it would have been a very popular decision at all, as we have come to find out through other articles. You know, the team just feels more comfortable with Mark Sanchez.
Okay, but I'm going all the way back to that Monday night game against the Texans. Well, let's just do the hypothetical. You throw Tim Tebow in there. What if he wins that game? Then how would that locker room feel about him? And I'm looking back at how the Denver locker room felt the same way until Tebow won at Miami. And then, you know, the rest of the story. He started winning games for the Broncos.
Well, that is a big if, though. That is a big if. If they had beaten the Texans, at that point, Sanchez was not playing as poorly as he is now. There was like a good game, a bad game, a good game. He didn't have a prolonged slump, although some might argue that this whole season has been kind of a flat line for him. But I think he did enough or showed enough flashes sporadically to keep himself in the job. If they wanted to make a change, they should have made it during the bye week. That would have given him the extra time to prepare for the so-called Tebow offense.
Rich Amini, Stephen A. Smith here. Thank you for being on the show. Let me ask you this question. I'm noticing Rex over the last few weeks just becoming more and more resolute, more stubborn when it came to the subject of Tim Tebow. Is it because Tim Tebow has been that bad in practice or since the Jets acquired him? Is it because the players are so steadfast against him? Or is it because Rex Ryan was forced to take on Tim Tebow by Woody Johnson? I don't know what the truth is. I'm asking you.
Well, I sat in Mike Tannenbaum's office last night, Stephen A. He absolutely swore to me that Woody Johnson had nothing to do at all with the acquisition of Tim Tebow. He says it was a 100% football decision between him, Rex, and Tony Sparano. I'm not sure if I totally believe him. I think Woody Johnson's very involved in all these matters, especially one as high profile as Tebow. So I just think that that's, you know, I don't know if I take that at face value, but, you know, it's a tough situation for him right now because of all these. Go ahead.
Let me piggyback off of that question, because if that's the case, and Mike Tannenbaum saying that between himself, Rex Ryan, and Tony Sparano, that this was an entirely football decision, considering the way they have used, or dare I say misused, Tim Tebow throughout this season, what is their status within the Jets organization right now, considering how atrocious this situation is deteriorated into?
Well, I wrote the other day, I think everybody's on notice in the organization. They're 3-6. They've lost 9 out of their last 12 games. And if you want to go back to their last championship game, since then they're 11-14. That's losing football. That's a bad brand of football, and I know that is bothering Woody Johnson. And I think, you know, someone's head's going to roll at the end of this season if it continues to go the way it's going. One thing we should mention, though, which I think is a big factor in their decision to stay with Mark Sanchez, he has signed, next year he has $8 million in guarantees for 2013, and I think that is a big factor in their decision, because if they bench him now, I think they feel they'll lose him emotionally, mentally, and they don't want to jeopardize the money they have to pay him next year.
Excuse me for interjecting real quick, Skip, but this is exactly what I'm talking about, Rich, because here's the deal. If you didn't have to give Mark Sanchez that extension, where was he going?
Right.
You felt the need to step out and give it to him unnecessarily, so you pigeonholed yourself. Once again, it's not just about Tebow's misuse. It's about how you've handled Mark Sanchez. Not just this offseason with the contract extension, but the 3 years you spent coddling him, evidently to no avail. Is somebody going to be held accountable for that?
I would think so. That was feel-good money, because that contract extension was announced on the day that they got their no from Peyton Manning. You know, not that they heavily pursued Manning, but they did make a phone call. And when they found out they were out of that sweepstakes, all of a sudden, a few hours later, they're announcing this contract extension to Mark Sanchez. I think that was feel-good money. It was symbolic in a way to prop him up as their starting quarterback. And you're right, Stephen A. I mean, somewhat that decision could come back to bite them.
So, Rich, Stephen A. and I have struggled with where was Rex's turning point on Tim Tebow? He seemed so excited early on. He was so gung-ho. We got Tebow and nobody else does. Coordinators, the defensive coordinators know how tough he is to deal with, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, something switched. And we can't figure out, was it just practice? Was it training camp practice? All of a sudden, Rex became defensive about Tebow and dug in and basically said, don't tell me when to play Tim Tebow.
I don't know when that turning point was, because you're right, Skip. From the moment they got him, and I've had even private conversations with people in the organization in training camp, and they were telling me, you can't wait till you see what this offense looks like with Tim Tebow running the Wildcat. They were so fired up about what it was going to look like and what they were going to do to defenses. And I don't know if they were just misled or they were just selling the public a bill of goods, because the guy's averaging 7 snaps a game. You can't expect him to go in and make an impact on a football game when he's playing 7 snaps. And they obviously don't think he can throw the ball. They gave him a chance last week. He was throwing R.A. Dickey knuckleballs on bubble screens to Jeremy Curley. They don't trust him throwing the ball downfield, clearly.
Although he did throw one against the Texans and hit Jason Hill right in the hands with it. That's the only downfield pass he's thrown all year. Go ahead, Stephen.
And he dropped it. It was a perfect throw.
Yeah.
Rich, it was a perfect throw. I'll give him credit for that. Who's calling the plays for the New York Jets, Rich?
Tony Sparano.
Totally. No, Rex Ryan has no input with that whatsoever?
Rex Ryan has no, he does not, he admits that he's not qualified to be an offensive play caller. He is spending more time in the offensive meeting rooms this year. He made a point of mentioning that last week. He even said, half jokingly, I think, that he actually installed a couple of plays for the Seattle game. I mean, no, he is not calling plays. Tony Sparano has autonomy over the offense.
So with that being asked, I'm sorry, Skip, go ahead, Skip.
Okay, real quick. Rich, gut feeling, where is Tim Tebow next year?
He won't be with the Jets. I'm convinced of that. If you know, they rode this for a year. They realize, I don't think they'll admit this publicly, but all the distractions, all the Tim Tebow stuff that comes with Tim Tebow, they're not going to sign up for this again next year. I could see him in Jacksonville next year. It would be a draw for them for obvious reasons. So I absolutely do not see Tim back with the Jets. And I don't know this, but I'm sure he doesn't want to come back. I'm sure he's very frustrated by the role he's been given. And in a sense, he probably feels like he was sold a bill of goods. So I see both sides parting mutually after the season.
Well, Rich, with that being said, Woody Johnson, looking at this team, a 3-6 record, and looking at the circus that the organization has become, clearly their quest to steal headlines from the New York Giants, they won that battle hands down, but pretty much nothing else. Is Woody Johnson the type of guy that's going to come out and say, this was my plan, I wanted to do this, I messed up? Or is it going to be one of those situations where Mike Tannenbaum, Rex Ryan, and Tony Sparano find themselves holding the bag?
Well, even if it was Woody's idea, and I think partly it was, I mean, owners don't have to show accountability. They're the boss. Someone else will have to wear that eventually. And, you know, Woody Johnson will address this at some point soon, and I don't think he's going to. He has said all along that it was a 100% football decision. So it's going to, Mike Tannenbaum ultimately could wear that. That could be the stain on his legacy.